This is the Goretti Publications Podcast. I'm Donald Goodman. This is the first episode of our podcast, and so a few remarks on what we're trying to do here should be appropriate. Goretti Publications is a publisher. We publish books, both original and reprints, and we publish both original stories and original poetry. By far our greatest quantity of work is poetry. Indeed, for some time we were publishing a new original poem every week. Poetry is often neglected, or even sneered at, as if somehow the great art of Homer, Dante, Shakespeare, Hopkins, Kilmer, and Sassoon were effeminate or weak. Indeed, there is effeminate and weak poetry, just as there is doggerel floating throughout the world. But poetry, as an art, is among the most ancient and the most glorious, and we have long thought it our responsibility to ensure that it's upheld, respected, and continued by Catholic artists in the modern day. So this podcast is, primarily, designed to share that poetry, along with our stories and other art, with the world. Poetry is, after all, primarily an oral art, meant to be heard and not merely read. For each episode, we will say something about poetry in general, as we have done here already, and then we will briefly discuss it, its form, and its meaning. Having completed part 1 of the show, we will now proceed to part 2, the poem. This poem is titled, The Fire Which Does Not Consume. A fire will burn as long as fuel has not succumbed to ashes rule, as flame will keep consuming till there's nothing left for it to burn. A fire will never cease to eat, like rage it finds all targets sweet, and from the ravages of flame no creature ever can return. Can there be flame which doesn't burn, which doesn't for destruction yearn, which kindles but does not reduce what it has lit to sulphurous ash? Is there a wolf which doesn't kill, a valley which is still a hill, a thunderstorm with lightning which can neither boom nor crack nor flash? But one great flame can persevere, and burn not making disappear, a fire which rages ever larger, but leaves neither pain nor scars. A fire which burns but won't consume, whose smoke will rise like sweet perfume. A fire which lights and guides the moon and sun and all the other stars. First, the structure of this poem. It is structured as 4 stanzas of 6 lines apiece. The first, second, fourth, and fifth lines of each stanza is in iambic tetrameter, while the third and sixth are in iambic octameter. But what do these words really mean? There are many ways to structure a poem, and to be poetry, the lines require structure, about which we will certainly say more in later episodes. In traditional stress-based poetry, which is by far the most common type in modern English, the lines are divided into feet. The number of feet is prefixed to the word meter, using the Greek name for the numbers rather than the English for historical reasons. So, trimeter, tri plus meter. Each line has 3 feet. Tetrameter, tetra plus meter. Each line has 4 feet. Pentameter, penta plus meter. Each line has 5 feet. Pentameter is likely the most common of all English poetry meters. And so on, for as long as we care to take it. As noted, pentameter is likely the most common of all modern English meters. However, tetrameter is also very common. In this poem, we have both tetrameter and octameter. Each foot can also be of multiple different types, depending on where the stress goes. English is a strongly stressed language. Each word has a very clear emphasis on one syllable, and for longer words, sometimes a secondary, lesser stress on another syllable. The stress isn't always predictable. It's something that is learned along with the sounds of the word. Consider the following. Emphasis. The stress is on the first syllable. Emphasis. The same word, but stress on the second syllable. Doing this sounds quite wrong, and can sometimes even make it hard to figure out what word is being spoken. Sometimes stress can be important in the meaning of a word. For example, the difference between refuse and refuse. And differences in stress can also mark different dialects. For example, in Southern American English, the word insurance is often stressed on the first syllable, while in General American, it is typically stressed on the second, insurance. A poetic foot is a pattern of stress, and the pattern gives it its name. In this poem, we have iambs, or iambic feet. In these feet, the stress pattern is unstressed, stressed. Take our first line as an example. a fire will burn as long as fuel. The pattern here is clearly short, long, short, long, short, long, short, long. Often, poets will describe the meter by using noises. In this case, ba-ba, 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 ba-ba. Imagine pronouncing the line differently. A fire will burn as long as fuel. It sounds very different, and also very wrong. Iambic feet are the most common type in English. However, some poets have made very strong use of other types, such as Longfellow with his trochees, or trochaic feet. These are the opposite of iambs, da-da, 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 rather than da-da, da-da, da-da. We will discuss different types of feet as they become relevant. So here we have iambic tetrameter, lines of 4, tetra feet, each of which is an iamb, and iambic octameter, lines of 8, octa feet, each of which is an iamb. So now that we know its structure, what does this poem mean? Of course, some poems are simply narrative. They mean exactly what they say. But often, poetry is written to express a meaning deeper than its simple words, just as we often find in the plots and characters of prose works. It doesn't take a deep thinker to realize that this poem is not dealing simply with burning wood. The first stanza discusses literal flames, and notes how their heat will dissolve anything they catch, and that an object once consumed is gone forever. Fire is an insatiable creature. It never has enough, and as long as there is fuel, it is also undying. The second and third stanzas then note that this is simply the nature of fire, and that it's absurd to consider a fire that doesn't do what fire necessarily does. We have some comparisons to other things that, by nature, simply are what they are. Wolves must kill. Valleys must be dips in the land. Otherwise, these things are not what we name them. The last stanza gives us a counterpoint, something that we often describe as a flame, but which acts in a very different way. Like fire, it kindles and heats. Like fire, it will continually grow, and as long as it has fuel, it can never die. But unlike fire, it doesn't destroy what gives rise to it. Indeed, this fire is special, a great light and guide. It guides the moon and sun and all the other stars. This guidance of the heavenly bodies is an ancient analogy for divine providence. One sees it quite prominently in Dante, among other places. And this makes it clear that we're talking about love, that is, charity, that is, God, by which God guides the universe, and by which we can grow and unite with Him. This analogy of charity to fire also calls us to an example from the Scriptures, the burning bush. When Moses approaches the burning bush, he notes that it burns, but is not consumed. This has long been considered an analogy for divine charity, a fire which animates and heats, but does not destroy what it burns. I hope that this reading and discussion has helped you to better understand this poem, and to grow in your love for poetry in general. Until next time, this has been the Goretti Publications Podcast. Our intro and outro music is Woodland Fantasy by Matthew Pablo, generously released under the Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license. We have made no changes other than clipping and fading as appropriate. The license is available at creativecommons.org/licenses/by/3.0, and the song itself is available at opengameart.org/content/woodland-fantasy. Mr. Pablo's website is matthewpablo.com. Our use of this material does not imply his endorsement in any way. This has been the Goretti Publications Podcast, gorpub.freeshell.org. Thank you for listening.